What if the person who sleeps in the bed right next to yours, sharing your childhood memories and laughing at your jokes, is secretly painting a target on your back? Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone you love completely, only to realize too late that behind their beautiful smile hides a plan to destroy your entire life? It is a thought that makes your stomach instantly drop, freezing the blood in your veins until you can hear your own frantic heartbeat echoing like a loud, trapped drum inside your ears. Let yourself pause for just a moment and truly feel the world around you. Think of the warm, buttery smell of a fresh pastry baking in the kitchen, a scent that normally makes you feel perfectly safe and cozy. Think of the crisp, sweet taste of fresh apple juice on a hot afternoon, or the incredibly soft feel of a velvety blanket brushed gently against your cheek. Now, imagine all of those beautiful, comforting things suddenly turning into the bitter, choking taste of cold ash in your mouth. Imagine looking at your peaceful home, listening to the happy crackle of a warm fireplace, and suddenly realizing that the fire is spreading to the walls, and your very own sister is the one standing in the dark, silently holding the burning match. Journey of betrayal, survival, and ultimate triumph. This is an educational lesson about how a dark human emotion can rot a person's soul from the inside out, and how an innocent person can lose absolutely everything, but still find the fierce inner strength to rise up from the dust. Let us sit down together, get completely comfortable, and listen closely to a story that will change the way you look at trust, family, and your own personal power. Once upon a time, in a beautiful old town where the streets were made of smooth gray cobblestones that clattered when horses walked by, and the houses were painted in warm, cheerful shades of yellow and orange, lived two sisters. Their names were Elena and Beatrice. Elena was the older sister, and Beatrice was the younger one. To the people who lived in the town, the two sisters looked like absolute best friends who could never be parted. They lived together in a beautiful, grand house left to them by their loving parents, completely surrounded by a sprawling garden full of bright red roses. In the intense heat of the summertime, those roses smelled just like sweet, warm honey dripping from a hive. But if you were to walk into that garden and look very closely, much closer than any of the busy neighbors ever did, you would see that the two sisters living inside were as completely different as the bright daytime sky and the darkest night. Elena was a natural creator, a professional stylist who possessed a truly magical gift for making everything around her beautiful. When Elena looked at a plain, boring piece of rough gray fabric, she did not just see a piece of cloth. She saw a living story waiting to be told. With nothing but a simple silver needle and a single spool of shiny, colorful thread, her two hands could create magnificent outfits that made regular people feel like kings and queens. When Elena walked down the cobblestone streets of the town, she always had a genuine, glowing smile for every single person she passed. Her fingers were almost always stained with blotches of bright indigo and crimson fabric dye from her long days of work. If you were to wrap your arms around her for a hug, she always smelled beautifully of fresh lavender soap and crisp, clean cotton. She worked incredibly hard every single day, pouring her entire heart, her salty tears, and her very soul into growing her small, independent fashion business. Beatrice, on the other hand, was completely different. She strongly disliked working hard, and she avoided any kind of heavy lifting or long hours. She loved nice things. She craved expensive, sparkling jewelry, and she absolutely loved it when people showered her with loud praise, but she wanted all of those wonderful things to come to her easily, without earning them. Whenever she sat in the living room, watching Elena working late into the freezing dark hours of the night under the dim, yellow glow of a small desk lamp, Beatrice did not feel proud of her older sister. Instead, a dark, ugly, twisting feeling began to grow deep inside her stomach. It was jealousy. It felt like a cold, heavy, jagged stone sitting in her belly, growing heavier with each passing day. Beatrice would sit silently on the soft velvet couch, listening to the steady, rhythmic click-clack-click of Elena's busy sewing machine echoing through the quiet house. She absolutely hated that sound. To Beatrice, That repetitive clicking noise was a constant reminder that Elena was stepping closer and closer to true success and fame. Every single time a new customer walked into their front shop, clinking the little brass bell above the wooden door, and praised Elena's incredible talent, Beatrice would force a big, fake smile onto her face. But on the inside, behind her quiet teeth, she was screaming with anger. Have you ever felt jealous of someone else before? It is a very common, very human feeling, and it is completely okay to admit it to yourself. We all feel that sharp little pinch of jealousy sometimes when we see someone else achieving something great. But here is the massive educational lesson you must take away from this today. Jealousy is exactly like a tiny spark of wildfire. If you throw water on it immediately by focusing entirely on your own life, working hard on your own path, and being truly grateful for the unique blessings you already have, that dangerous little spark goes out completely. But if you feed that spark with angry, bitter thoughts, it quickly turns into a giant, roaring, uncontrollable monster that burns down your own peace of mind. Beatrice chose to feed her monster every single day, giving it more fuel until it completely took over her heart. As the months passed by, Elena's reputation as a professional stylist grew far beyond the walls of their little town. Important people from the big capital city started sending letters, asking Elena to style them for massive grand balls and professional work events. Elena was so full of joy and creative energy that she decided to pour every single penny of her life savings into creating her very first independent major fashion line. It was a collection of breathtaking coats and elegant dresses that she named The Truth Sewn in the Lining. She spent weeks traveling to distant markets to select the finest materials, purchasing silks that felt exactly like cool water running through your open fingers and thick wools that were as warm and comforting as a mother's tight hug. One evening, the winter air outside grew incredibly bitter, and a wild wind was howling through the trees, making the glass window panes rattle loudly in their frames. Elena was sitting at her heavy wooden work table, her eyes burning with exhaustion as she rubbed them with her stained fingers. Her neck and shoulders ached terribly from bending over the fabrics for more than 10 hours straight. The door creaked open, and Beatrice walked slowly into the room, holding 2 steaming ceramic cups of hot chocolate. The sweet, rich, comforting smell of melted cocoa and vanilla immediately filled the chilly workspace, completely masking the sharp, chemical scent of the fabric glue Elena had been using to attach tiny crystals to a gown. "You are working far too hard, my sweet sister," Beatrice said, her voice sounding as smooth and sweet as warm maple syrup. "Here, you must take a break. Drink this warm cocoa I made just for you." Elena looked up and smiled, her tired heart melting with pure gratitude. She looked at her younger sister and thought about how incredibly lucky she was to have family by her side during such an important moment in her career. "Thank you so much, Beatrice," Elena said softly, her voice thick with tiredness. She took a slow sip of the warm, sweet liquid. It tasted absolutely delicious, coating her throat and instantly warming her chilly, stiff fingers. But as Elena drank the comforting cocoa, she was completely blind to the strange, sharp, predatory look flashing in Beatrice's eyes. She did not notice that Beatrice's hand was trembling with nervous energy, or that her sister was stepping back toward the shadows of the room. Elena trusted her sister with her life. She fully believed that because she loved Beatrice with all her heart, Beatrice must naturally love her back with that same loyalty. And here is another powerful piece of life advice for you, my friends. Never assume that everyone else has the same kind heart as you. It is a harsh, sad truth of life, but some people will take your pure kindness, your open trust, and your gentle love, and they will turn it into a weapon to use against you when you least expect it. Within just a few minutes of finishing the cup, Elena's eyelids felt impossibly heavy. The room began to spin gently, and a deep, unnatural sleepiness washed over her body like a thick blanket. The hot chocolate Beatrice had lovingly handed her was mixed with a powerful, secret sleeping herb. Elena could barely walk over to the small cot in the corner of the workshop before her eyes closed completely. Soon, she was snoring softly, dreaming of beautiful white dresses, bright runway lights, and a future where she could finally provide a life of luxury for both herself and her sister. As soon as the steady sound of Elena's deep breathing filled the room, Beatrice's fake smile vanished. The house became completely silent, except for the heavy, rhythmic ticking of the ancient grandfather clock out in the main hallway. Tick, tock, tick, tock. To anyone listening, it sounded exactly like a terrifying countdown to a total disaster. Beatrice stood up and walked slowly over to the racks where Elena's gorgeous new fashion collection was hanging, waiting to be shown to the city's richest, most powerful investors the very next morning. The fabrics gleamed beautifully under the moonlight. Beatrice looked at them, and the monster of jealousy inside her stomach roared with vicious delight. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a large bottle of dark, permanent, indelible black ink. She twisted the cap off, and the sharp, pungent, chemical smell of the ink filled the clean room, stinging the air. With a cruel, twisted smile on her face, Beatrice lifted the bottle and poured the thick, staining black ink all over Elena's pristine, beautiful white dresses. The dark liquid soaked greedily into the expensive silk, ruining months of hard work in a matter of seconds. But she did not stop there. Beatrice then reached for a pair of large, heavy, sharp silver sewing scissors. She gripped the handles tightly and began to furiously slash through the remaining coats and gowns, tearing the beautiful, delicate seams that Elena had carefully sewn by hand. Rip, snip, shred, rip. The sound of tearing silk filled the dark room like the sound of breaking bones. Yet the most terrifying and calculated part of Beatrice's plan was not the physical destruction of the clothes. It was the trap she was about to set to completely ruin Elena's freedom. Beatrice walked over to Elena's desk and picked up the private business ledger, the special leather book where Elena kept all her financial records, investor contracts, and saved money. Using a pen, Beatrice carefully forged Elena's handwriting, changing the numbers in the book to make it look like Elena had been secretly stealing massive amounts of money from her own wealthy clients and investors. Then, Beatrice took a large stack of cash that she had secretly stolen from the shop's safe over the past few weeks and walked into Elena's bedroom. She stuffed the stolen money deep inside Elena's personal mattress, hiding it perfectly. The next morning arrived, and the sun rose brightly over the cobblestone streets, painting the sky in beautiful, vibrant streaks of pink, orange, and gold. Elena woke up feeling terribly dizzy, her head pounding with a fierce, throbbing pain from the sleeping herb. She rubbed her aching temples and stumbled slowly downstairs, expecting to prepare the workshop for the highly anticipated arrival of her business investors. But the moment her hand turned the brass doorknob and she pushed the workshop door open, a sound came out of her throat that sounded like a wounded animal trapped in a snare. She gasped for air, her lungs freezing up. The room was a complete and utter nightmare. Her gorgeous, flawless white dresses were covered in ugly, dripping, ruined black stains. The precious silk and wool were shredded into sad, useless, jagged rags that littered the wooden floor like dead leaves. Before her brain could even begin to understand the horror of what she was looking at, a loud, aggressive, terrifying bang 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 rattled the front door of the house, threatening to break the wood. Within a matter of minutes, the peaceful house was flooded with loud, shouting voices, heavy leather boots stomping carelessly over the ruined fabrics on the floor, and the cold, terrifying, metallic clinking of heavy iron handcuffs. The wealthy city investors had arrived early, but they had not come alone. They had brought the town's law authorities with them because they had received a detailed, anonymous letter the night before stating that Elena was a fraudulent thief who was planning to steal their money and run away. "I didn't do anything. I swear to you I am innocent," Elena screamed, hot, salty tears streaming down her pale cheeks, burning her skin. "Please just look around you. Look at my beautiful clothes. Someone broke in and maliciously destroyed all of my hard work." The lead investigator looked around the messy room with a cold, unbelieving expression. "Search the house," he ordered firmly. The officers immediately tore through the rooms, and within minutes they found exactly what Beatrice had hidden: the altered, forged business ledger and the thick stack of stolen cash stuffed deep inside Elena's personal mattress. To the eyes of the law, it looked like the absolute perfect, open and shut crime. It looked as though Elena had purposely destroyed her own clothing line in a desperate attempt to claim insurance money while hiding the investors' cash for herself. Elena's heart pounded like a wild, trapped bird slamming against the walls of a cage. She looked around the crowded room wildly, searching for any sign of help or comfort. Her eyes finally landed on Beatrice, who was standing quietly in the corner of the room. Beatrice was squeezing a white tissue tightly in her hands, making soft, dramatic sobbing noises, pretending to be completely heartbroken by her sister's actions. "Beatrice, please, you have to tell them the truth," Elena begged desperately, stretching her handcuffed hands out toward her sister. "Tell them I was right here with you all night long. Tell them how much I love my work, how I would never destroy my own creations." Beatrice stepped forward slowly, her eyes wide with a perfectly practiced look of fake sadness and pity. She leaned in very close to Elena, so close that the police could not hear her. In that dark split second, the fake sadness vanished from Beatrice's face, and a tiny, wicked, venomous grin appeared on her lips. She whispered into Elena's ear, "Goodbye, Elena. Everything you own belongs to me now." Then, turning around to face the police officers with giant tears in her eyes, Beatrice cried out loud, "I am so incredibly sorry, officers. My poor sister has been acting so strange and desperate lately. She was obsessed with getting rich quickly. I tried with all my strength to stop her from doing this, but she just wouldn't listen to me." The sheer shock of this betrayal was so incredibly massive that Elena felt as though the solid wooden floor had suddenly split wide open beneath her feet, dropping her into a dark, bottomless pit. Her very own sister, the person she had shared a home with, the girl she had protected, fed, and loved with every fiber of her being, had completely set her up for a life of ruin. Elena was roughly led out of the house, her arms pinned behind her back as she was placed into the back of a cold, gray metal carriage. The local townspeople stood by their windows and out on the cobblestone streets, whispering maliciously to one another and pointing their fingers at her in deep shame. In just one single, tragic hour, Elena went from being a highly respected professional stylist to a hated, despised criminal in the eyes of everyone she knew. Elena spent several long, agonizing months locked away in a cold, dark, silent place, while the lawyers and investigators slowly sorted through the massive, confusing mess of her business paperwork. Every single day, she sat alone on a hard, freezing stone bench, staring blankly at the rough gray walls. The food she was given tasted like dry cardboard, and the heavy air inside smelled constantly of damp stone, rust, and old metal. For the first few weeks of her confinement, Elena did absolutely nothing but weep. A deep, crushing, suffocating sadness sat directly on her chest, making it hard to even breathe. She kept asking the empty room the exact same painful questions over and over again. Why? Why did my own sister do this to me? What did I ever do to deserve such cruelty? This is the exact dark place in life where so many people completely give up. When a person you love and trust completely breaks your heart into a million pieces, it feels like a deep, infected wound that will never stop bleeding. But this is precisely where the deeply educational and life-changing part of our story becomes important for you to understand. As the weeks rolled by, Elena realized something absolutely beautiful while sitting in that quiet, dark room. She realized that although Beatrice had successfully taken away her physical clothes, her beautiful shop, her savings, and her public reputation, Beatrice had not taken away her God-given talent. Beatrice could never steal the brilliant creativity living inside Elena's brain, nor could she ever touch the fierce, unyielding strength inside Elena's human spirit. Elena stood up and wiped the dry salt from her cheeks. She looked around the floor and found a tiny, discarded piece of black charcoal that had fallen from a guard stove. Using that tiny piece of charcoal, she began to draw gorgeous, flowing dress designs all over the rough stone walls of her dark room. She practiced matching complex color combinations in her mind. She exercised her body daily to stay physically strong. She made a conscious, powerful choice not to let bitterness and hatred turn her into an ugly monster like her sister. Eventually, because there was simply not enough solid, undeniable proof to keep her locked up forever, and because a very kind, smart lawyer began to see the deep honesty and pure light shining in Elena's eyes, she was finally released. But she was left completely, utterly broke. She had no home to return to, no money in her pockets, and absolutely no friends left to call. The entire town still believed the awful, malicious rumors that Beatrice had spent months spreading about her. When Elena walked out of the prison gates into the bright, blinding sunlight, the fresh outdoor air smelled sweeter than it ever had before, but she had absolutely nowhere to go. She walked slowly to the very furthest edge of the town, far away from her childhood home and the beautiful rose garden that was now stolen from her. Deep near the edge of the dark woods, she found a small, long-abandoned wooden shed. The roof was broken and leaked rain, the windows were shattered into sharp pieces, and the inside was completely covered in thick cobwebs and dust. But to Elena, this broken shack was not a tragedy. It was a completely blank canvas waiting for a new story. Elena started her life over from the absolute bottom. She walked down to the local textile markets every evening when the merchants were closing up their stalls. She gently asked them for the small, irregular scraps of fabric that they were about to throw directly into the trash bins. These were tiny, uneven, mismatched pieces of cloth. Some were stained with grease, some were torn at the edges, and others were badly faded by the burning sun. With her trusty silver needle and a tiny bit of cheap thread she earned by sweeping market floors, Elena began to do something that left people completely amazed. She began to sew those discarded scraps of fabric together. She used a complex, difficult style called patchwork, but because she was a trained, professional stylist, she did not just make simple, ordinary blankets. She made high fashion. She created beautiful, unique, breathtaking coats where every single separate piece of fabric told a visual story of survival, struggle, and resilience. She worked tirelessly through the freezing winter nights, her bare hands shivering from the cold, listening to the wild wind rustling the dark tree leaves outside her broken windows. One bright afternoon, a highly wealthy, aristocratic lady from a massive, distant city was traveling through the area in a grand, luxurious carriage drawn by 4 beautiful white horses. Suddenly, with a loud crack, one of the carriage's heavy wooden wheels snapped completely in half, right down the road from Elena's little wooden shed. The wealthy lady stepped out of the carriage, sighing loudly, wrapping her arms around herself as she complained bitterly about the chilly, biting wind. Elena saw the stranded woman and walked out of her small shed to offer her a warm cup of herbal tea. Elena was wearing one of her newly completed, handmade patchwork coats. It was an absolute masterpiece of design: deep, royal blues, rich, vibrant reds, and shimmering golden threads all woven together in a pattern that looked like a beautiful sunrise. The wealthy lady stopped complaining mid-sentence. Her eyes went completely wide with awe. She stared at Elena's coat, reached out a gloved hand to touch the fabric, and gasped, "My goodness, child, where on earth did you buy that magnificent piece of clothing? I visit the highest fashion houses in Paris and London, and I have never seen anything so uniquely beautiful in all my life." Elena smiled softly, a gentle warmth shining in her eyes. "I didn't buy it, ma'am," she replied quietly. "I designed and sewed it myself, using the broken pieces of fabric that the rest of the world chose to throw away." The wealthy lady was so deeply moved and incredibly impressed that she immediately pulled out a heavy velvet pouch and bought the very coat right off Elena's back for a massive, unbelievable amount of gold coins. She didn't stop there. She also placed a huge order for 10 more custom coats to give to her wealthy, powerful friends in the high society circles. Just like that, the great wheel of fortune began to turn back in Elena's favor. Elena worked harder than she ever had before. She used her new gold to fix her workshop, and she began hearing poor, struggling local women from the town, paying them excellent wages and patiently teaching them how to sew and style. She built a brand new fashion empire from the ground up, and this time, she did not name it after the past. She named her new brand the Phoenix, after the legendary magical bird that burns down to absolute ash but rises again from the flames, bigger, grander, and stronger than it ever was before. While Elena was rising like a magnificent phoenix, what was happening to her treacherous sister, Beatrice? Beatrice had successfully taken over Elena's old fashion shop and their parents' beautiful house. But remember the ultimate educational lesson of today. You can never, ever run a successful life or business using nothing but laziness, lies, and jealousy. Beatrice had absolutely no idea how to style people correctly. She did not know how to design clothes or sew fabric with genuine love and care. When customers walked into the shop, Beatrice was incredibly rude, impatient, and arrogant with them. The once beautiful red rose garden in the front yard began to wither, dry up, and die because Beatrice completely forgot to water it. The sweet, honey-like smell of summer roses turned into the sour, awful smell of rotten, moldy leaves. Within a couple of years, Beatrice completely ran out of money because all of Elena's old clients left the shop in disappointment. Desperate to keep up her fake lifestyle of luxury, Beatrice began borrowing massive amounts of money from dangerous, greedy, dishonest moneylenders. She became constantly stressed, angry, and miserable. Her face, which used to be naturally pretty, began to look sour, harsh, and heavily wrinkled from always frowning in bitter anger. One beautiful, sunny afternoon, a massive, international fashion festival was held right in the middle of the town square. It was entirely organized by the wealthy, aristocratic lady who had discovered Elena in the woods. Everyone from the town, including the mayor and all the local merchants, gathered around a grand wooden stage, clapping their hands and cheering with high excitement. Beatrice stood silently in the very back of the crowd, biting her fingernails nervously, her heart full of her usual bitter malice. The grand announcer stepped up to the front of the stage and spoke loudly into a large brass horn. "And now, citizens of the world, I present to you the greatest, most resilient designer of our modern time, the genius creator of the Phoenix fashion collection, Elena." The entire crowd gasped in absolute shock and admiration as Elena stepped out onto the stage. She looked completely stunning. She was wearing a simple, flawlessly elegant gown of her own design, her hair tied up neatly in a classic style, and her eyes sparkling with total peace, wisdom, and confidence. The townspeople instantly realized how horribly wrong they had been about her all those years ago. They began to cheer so loudly and clap so hard that the very cobblestone ground beneath their feet shook with excitement. Beatrice stood in the back, watching her sister receive the ultimate glory, and the monster of jealousy inside her stomach completely broke its chains. She lost all control of her mind. She began pushing aggressively through the crowd, screaming at the top of her lungs like a wild, crazed animal. "She is a fraud and a thief," Beatrice shrieked, her voice cracking horribly, sounding loud and screechy in the open air. "She stole from her wealthy investors years ago. She belongs in a dark prison cell, not on a glorious stage. I was the one who saved this town from her. I am the one who single-handedly ruined her white dresses back then to expose her crimes. I did it. I poured the ink, I cut the fabric." The entire crowd went completely, deathly silent. The loud cheering stopped instantly. You could hear a single small needle drop onto the stone street. Clink. Beatrice suddenly froze, her face turning completely white as paper. In her blind, furious, uncontrollable rage, she had just openly confessed to her own hidden crime in front of the mayor, the head police investigators, and every single person in the town. She had tried with all her might to publicly insult and destroy Elena one last time. But instead, Her own prideful, angry mouth had snapped shut on her like a steel trap. Two heavy police officers stepped forward immediately, their boots clicking on the stones, and placed the cold, heavy iron handcuffs firmly onto Beatrice's trembling wrists. As they began to roughly drag her away to face a long sentence in prison for fraud and malicious destruction, Beatrice looked back at Elena, crying tears of genuine terror and begging her sister for mercy. But this time, Elena did not cry, nor did she run to save her. She looked at her screaming sister with a calm sense of pity, but she remained completely silent. Elena knew that true justice had finally arrived, not because she had sought out nasty revenge, but because the truth always inevitably finds its way into the light. My beautiful, dear friends, thank you so much for staying here with me today to listen to this incredibly deep, emotional, and life-changing journey. This story teaches us an ultimate, profound lesson that you must keep locked safely inside your heart for the rest of your days. No one is perfect in life, and people will definitely hurt you. Sometimes, the people who hurt you the deepest are the very ones who were supposed to love, protect, and support you the most in this world. But when life knocks you down completely, when your big plans are totally ruined by others, and when you feel like you are sitting in the dark surrounded by nothing but cold ash and broken pieces, I want you to remember Elena. Do not ever let the cruelty, the lying, or the jealousy of other people change your pure, kind heart. Your unique talent, your beautiful kindness, and your unstoppable inner strength belong entirely to you, and there is not a single person on this earth who can ever take those things away from you. Work hard every day, stay completely honest, be patient, and use the broken pieces of your life to build a magnificent new future that is even more beautiful than anything you lost. If you absolutely loved this story, if it touched your soul deeply, and if it taught you a truly valuable lesson for your own life today, please hit that subscribe button right now and give this video a giant thumbs up. Here at the Daily Altar, we believe completely in the immense healing power of storytelling to motivate your mind, to guide your heart, and to bring a bright, burning light into the darkest corners of your personal journey. By subscribing and joining our growing family today, you will ensure that you never miss a single story of high resilience, deep human wisdom, and ultimate triumph. Please share this video with a friend or a loved one who needs to find their strength today, and leave a detailed comment down below telling me exactly what Elena's journey taught you about your own inner power. Thank you so much for watching. Keep your beautiful heart completely pure, and I will see you right here in our very next story.